Welcome to Mom Alternative, where we try to have a sane and reasonable attitude towards motherhood and parenting. Today we'll be talking about control freaks and how they're really insecure, covering topics like who's allowed to purchase a Father's Day gift for your husband, what's a reasonable cadence of checking in with your spouse, and how to deal with a husband who's really stingy about money. Our first thread is titled, Am I the A-hole? My mum wants to get my husband a first Father's Day gift. She says, here's a text from my mom. I feel kind of stepped on. Why would she purchase this for my husband? And then she has here a little screenshot of the conversation that she had with her mom from her phone. It has a little picture of what looks like a photo frame. And then it says on it, Happy First Father's Day, picture of the dad. And then she says, hey, can you send me a picture of your husband and daughter? I want to have that made. And OP replies, no, don't, lol. Then her mum replies again saying, take one of him holding the baby, please. And that's pretty much it. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I'm completely speechless, honestly, about this one. She says, hey, I feel kind of stepped on, and I don't know why gifts, Father's Day gifts, can only come from the wife. I find that a little bit strange. It would never even occur to me to have a problem with this. I think it's actually a really sweet and nice gesture from her mum that she cares enough about Father's Day that she wants to buy him something for it and to give him some kind of celebration that he's a new dad. I think it's awesome. I don't understand where this desire and sense of competition comes from and why it feels like if she gives a gift for Father's Day, then that fundamentally means that she's taking away something from his wife, from her daughter in this case. It seems super sad to me. What's also actually quite hilarious about this, for those of you who can see the thread, like the text conversation part of it, it's honestly, all she says is no, don't, and then lol. And as far as I can tell, like that's not, I wouldn't be taking that very seriously. It's very clear that her mom doesn't take it very seriously because she's like, yeah, come on, just send a picture. What's the problem? And fair enough, because none of this as a response actually explains why she has a problem. The thread doesn't explain why she has a problem with it. You can see the level of, I want to say, bad faith that a lot of people have where they go into something like this and it's actually like people have good intentions. People have no reason to have a problem with anything. No one's trying to cause a fight or create a fight. Actually, I could think of a lot of people who would say, hey, my mom didn't even bother buying a Father's Day gift for my husband and then having a big problem with that instead. So it just seems to me that some people want to take things in the wrong way and are looking for a reason to be offended. And that's what that looks like. And see the comments, most people are also like, hey, you know what? I'm actually not sure what your problem is. One person says, if you don't want her to, then be more direct. The lol makes it seem like you're kidding. You could say, this is sweet and thanks for thinking of us, but I'd like to give this type of gift for his first Father's Day. I do think it's a nice thought, but you feel how you feel. Just be direct. I get so tired of people having this knee-jerk response of trying to validate every single emotion a person might go through at any point in time, as if 100% of your everyone says, hey, your feelings are valid. And it's like, yeah, okay, you can't, sure, I guess, if you want to say you can't change your feelings per se, although I think a lot of feelings are actually kind of circular in that you want to be upset, so you get upset, so that makes you more upset, and then you get even more upset, and so on. I would say that sometimes if what you're feeling is irrational and unreasonable and you can understand why it's irrational and unreasonable, then you can just let it go and move on. And if everyone around you says, hey, you know what, this is a really nice gesture, then I would take that at face value and go, okay, you know what, maybe I'm the one that's in the wrong here and maybe I can just get over it and I don't need to dwell on this feeling all that much. But everyone else is like, hey, your feelings are valid. One person seconds this. She says, you're not being direct at all. I do think she's just trying to be sweet in this situation and not trying to be overbearing. Explain why you actually don't want her to do this so that she understands. Yeah, like some kind of explanation. If no one else on this forum of otherwise pretty intense people who also have major problems with their mums or with their mother-in-laws understands exactly why you have a problem with this, then it's really you. It's not everyone else. this person is rather on her side. She says, I feel you. It's a bit odd because she didn't have a kid with him and he isn't her child. Definitely your role to do something nice for him. On the other hand, when my son gets married and has kids, I plan on getting his spouse at least flowers for Mother's Day and stepping back because the day isn't about me at that point. But if he said no to the flowers, I'd respect his wishes and more feelings on the matter. I can guarantee you that no son in the world will ever care about you buying flowers for his wife as his mother. I'm pretty confident that that is not ever going to be a problem that anyone runs into. This idea of, hey, she didn't have a kid with him and he isn't her child, meaning that you cannot celebrate fathers. No one says this about mothers, right? Like, no one says, hey, for Mother's Day, the only people allowed to say Happy Mother's Day to you are people who are either your spouse or your child. And everyone else in your family is just not meant to recognize that you're a mother on that day. So I don't know. I have no idea where this is coming from. It's so strange. One person replies very straight out. She says, personally, I don't see the issue. And another one tries to kind of come up with the problem. She says, hey, I think her issue is not the fact that her mom wants to get him something. I personally don't see a problem with that, but more so the fact of it being his first Father's Day. So she wants to be the one to get him something like that, being that they created the child. I also don't see a problem with that. I doubt a card to sister-in-law for mother-in-law would be a problem for OP. The issue is that she just needs to speak up. Hey, I appreciate the kind gesture, but as my husband's first Father's Day, I would prefer to do that myself. But if you would like to get him a gift he needs or wants, something else. It all comes down to communication. I think it's sweet she thought of him. I don't quite understand why someone else deciding to buy your husband a gift stops you from buying your husband a gift. Whether for Father's Day or anything else. Like, there's no reason why she still couldn't do so. Like, she could do something way nicer and way more over the top because he's her husband. She really wants to celebrate him, and nothing that her mom does would stop this. Now, another person says, what is the problem? And OP does actually reply. She says, it's me, I'm the problem, which I'm pretty impressed with, actually, in terms of self-awareness. It's an impressive level of self-awareness for this type of thread. And then someone replies to this and says, I mean, I'm with you. I don't have a problem with my mom getting him a Father's Day gift, but this particular thing seems intimate and maybe something that would come from you. Just wanted to let you know that you're not alone. I did not find anything at all like remotely intimate about it. I just think everyone who tries to agree with her makes no sense to me, honestly. And then the final comment that I will end with, she says, why can't your mom get your husband a thoughtful gift? Does every woman on here need to make everything a competition? You can get him a thoughtful gift and so can she. And another person seconds this and says, why spend so much of your time making things a competition? Life is way too short. And that is the fundamental lesson of this thread. If people want to buy you a gift, if people want to buy your husband a gift, you can just say thanks and move on with your life. Whether you like the gift or you don't like the gift, you can always think, hey, it's the thought that counts. Be grateful and happy that there are people in your life who are thinking of you and who care about your husband enough to give him a gift, and then just let it go. I don't understand. Like, sometimes negativity begets negativity, to be honest. You kind of ask for it. If this is how you react to people being nice and thoughtful, then you deserve it. Now, this one is a lot more serious. It's titled Checking In with Your Partner or Spouse. Do you do this throughout the day? I'm wondering what's normal. I work from home primarily, where sometimes I'm in and out. If I leave, I don't feel the need to tell my partner this. He's working, so why bother with this small detail? I don't hide being gone. If we were talking, then I'd mention it, but otherwise I don't. Sometimes I'll make a stop somewhere, maybe pick up groceries, just normal stuff. He basically gets upset if I don't tell him, and I don't know why. Would this upset you or your partner? Today he found out that I went to Best Buy after an appointment, and he was basically walking around the house saying, what else did you do? Basically trying to find other things. He only asked this because I left the receipt on the table. I said, yeah, I went. What's the big deal? Now it seems like he's being passive aggressive. I don't share this same thought. Some days he's gone all day for work and I don't feel the need to check in or for him to tell me what he's doing. So tell me, is this normal? And then she edits and adds, I want to also clarify that we text throughout the day, all day, and he calls me frequently. He'll call me from job to job sometimes, but it can get excessive if I'm actually trying to get work done. To add context, the other day I caught up on my work and I was so excited to be about to have 5 uninterrupted hours to clean our house. I put my AirPods in, connected them to my laptop to stream a show and started to clean. I went to check my phone after a bit and saw that he called and texted me 5 times. His text said something like, "Wow, why are you ignoring me? What are you doing?" This upset me a lot. I called him back only after like 20 minutes and I told him I was really disappointed he was texting me like that. I didn't appreciate it and not to text me again. All accusatory when I was just cleaning the house and didn't hear the phone. He laughed it off, but I feel like he was lighthearted because his employee was with him. It really bothered me that he texted me like that. Now, there are 2 potential angles to this one, as always, pretty much. On the one hand, you could say, okay, maybe there is some kind of reason for the partner here to be so touchy. Maybe there was cheating in the past. Maybe he has his own set of trust issues because he was cheated on previously. Maybe there are situations in which OP has lied to him that give him the impression, hey, she's hiding something, and that's why he's so touchy about it. The other angle is that there is a certain amount of knowing what your spouse is up to that I think is quite natural and quite reasonable and quite normal. And so, for example, if I were to have an appointment and I were to drop by a store and my husband would come back from work, it would just come up in normal casual conversation. I'd tell him where I was and what I did that day. And so I don't know if maybe OP is the one who's really touchy because she doesn't like this feeling of I have to report what I'm doing to my spouse, which is fair enough. When you're a grown adult woman, you don't really want to be feeling like you're reporting. But maybe she tries to keep things from him for this reason. The situation that she explains, that she describes at the bottom here, sounds very strange to me. Definitely the freak out about her not answering the phone within 20 minutes is quite strange. All that said, I think my husband would also get quite annoyed at me if he called me and I ignore my phone, which I do all the time because my phone doesn't ring out loud. And so that's a source of conflict for us. So maybe there's some element of that to it. But in general, that he really freaked out and immediately thought, hey, what are you doing? You must be doing something strange. It's very weird. And then the way that she wraps it up, she says, hey, he laughed it off, which then gives the impression that he didn't actually take it all that seriously to begin with. So basically, I feel that this thread is just not honest. There is some background story here that OP is not very upfront about. Fundamentally, if I felt like my husband needs to keep tabs on me to a level that I think is unreasonable, I would probably try and sit down and figure out where's the trust issue coming from. Like, why does he feel the need to know exactly where I am, what I'm doing every day? Why do I need to pick up the phone within 2 minutes if I'm at home and he knows that I'm at home? Like, did he actually need something? Was there something urgent? Is he more annoyed at me not being reachable versus anything else? Like, these are the types of conversations that I think you would have to try and solve this. I think there is some element here where you could argue that the partner is just being super controlling, like way over the top. And that's very well possibly, like that's possibly the case. But if there's nothing else going on wrong in the relationship, then I wouldn't assume, like I would find it strange if this is an isolated incident in terms of controlling behavior. If he's controlling in general about everything else as well, or about a couple of other things too, then I would probably say, okay, there's a red flag here. There's something going on here that is not normal. Now, the first person replies, we don't. That is, they don't check in with each other. She says, we check in when we're both home and again when the kids are in bed. I would be worried if my husband started needing to know where I was always. Checking in to see how the day is going is definitely good, just not something that we do. And OP replies, exactly. I'm not saying I never reach out. We text frequently throughout the day, every day. I will see how work is going and so on. But when he texts, it's more, what are you doing? Not, how is your day going? So I feel like it's more checking up on me than genuinely seeing how I am. I've brought this up before about how I didn't like it, but after a year or two, he hasn't made much changes to doing this. Now, that sounds like they've been in a relationship for a pretty long time, and it also sounds like the communication between them is just completely off. So if she says, hey, he says this thing on a really regular basis, and I take it as a pretty bad sign, and then you talk about it, and neither one of you kind of backs down from that position, so he doesn't try to change how he's communicating, and she doesn't think, okay, I know that he doesn't mean it like this because we talked about it, so I can move on and just feel about it differently. then that's probably a problem, because what that means is that they have arguments in the past that are a year, 2 years, 3 years old, and they're both still holding on to the same positions that they held back then. That's the assumption. It could very well be that OP is the main person who's really holding on to that, and he's just like, well, I explained it to her, so I don't know what's the big deal. Next comment, a person says, I always let him know what I'm doing and if I end up at other places. However, he doesn't hound me if I don't. That's kind of odd. I'd ask your husband why he doesn't feel the need to share his every move with you as well. And then OP replies, he'll tell me if something comes up, but again, he sometimes doesn't. If he ends up doing something he didn't tell me about, I just don't care. It's so insignificant for me. He's at work, whatever he's doing throughout the day, I'm assuming is work-based. And then someone finally tells her, hey, there seems to be a lack of trust based on what you gave us. I think you need to have a conversation with him as to why it's so important that he knows where you are at all times, and it feels like he doesn't trust you. If nothing is wrong, I think it will help to talk it out. Hopefully he isn't projecting, as we have seen so many times on this app. And what that's referring to is that often men who are themselves cheating will accuse their spouse, partner, girlfriend of cheating as well. Something about exhibiting the same behavior that you like, just the moment that you are also acting in that way, and it's one of the actions, I guess one of the thought processes that you're going through is, hey, how do I hide the fact that I'm cheating? Then suddenly you start seeing cheating signs everywhere, and it makes you super hyper paranoid because that's already what you're doing. So that's what that means in terms of projection. That is also possible as an option. If he is cheating and there's nothing else in the relationship that suggests that she might be cheating, there was no reason for him to suspect her of doing this, then there might be some element of projection there. Next comment, me and my husband have live 360 on each other because he's a trucker, and usually I will tell him when I'm going somewhere so he doesn't think that something is wrong. I don't leave the house much though. Usually I'll tell him where I went or what I did because that's just normal conversation. And OP replies to this one. She says, I'm definitely not hiding going places. If we catch up when he's home from work, yeah, I'll mention that I did XYZ, but he came home and saw the receipt right away and got upset, saying, why don't I ever tell him anything? It's a response that bugs me. I tell him a lot. I didn't know I had to tell him about Best Buy prior to Best Buy. I bought something, so surely he would have saw when I ordered and asked when I got it. And so it seems to me that they are just on different pages when it comes to communication. They don't really seem to have a good understanding of what the other person wants. At the very least, they don't accept each other's intentions in terms of, hey, I'm not assuming something bad when I freak out that you're not telling me XYZ. Maybe, I just feel like you're hiding things from me because you're not engaging with me or interacting with me as much as I would like you to, and we don't talk to each other as much as I would want. That's another potential reason or explanation for the behavior here. But it does sound pretty dodgy. It does not sound like a very healthy relationship at all. Final comment, she says, we don't tell each other our every move, but we do randomly check in with each other. We work opposite, so when he's at work, I'm home with the kids and vice versa. So sometimes he'll texting me asking what we're up to. Sounds like he is trapped at home working. He doesn't work at home. And he is just bummed that he doesn't get to go out too. Working from home can be bittersweet. And OP replies to this one. She says, sometimes it is a bit of jealousy. If I say I'm heading out, he'll respond, lucky. Not sure how it's lucky. Also, it's my job. I brought up how this bothers me sometimes, but he always says, I was just joking. He continues saying these things after years of me saying it annoys me. I can't help that I chose a career where I work primarily from home. I did this because prior to him, I was a single mom and I needed flexibility with my schedule. I don't appreciate the smart-ass comments from him. When we met, he was so impressed. I built my little self-employed business, and now after years after years with me, he uses it against me because he hates what he does, but he makes good money. And that sounds really, really awful. So if I ever had the feeling that, hey, you know what, I built a really successful business for myself. I'm now self-employed. I can work from home. I have a really comfortable job. I really love what I do. And instead of being supportive, my husband or my partner is actually pretty angry at me, is jealous of me, hates what he's doing, and is taking out that resentment on me, then that's also a problem. So fundamentally, it seems like there are a million different potential issues that could be hiding under the surface here. And it's really hard to know which one is the case. Fundamentally, as someone experiencing this, I would always try to default towards conversation and say, hey, maybe it's worth sitting down, just trying to understand where these behaviors are coming from and why they are so strong. I definitely think that there is an element of this. It sounds a little bit controlling to me, and I get where that's coming from to some extent. But I get where that's coming from. I can see potential reasons for why that might be the case, but OP really has not given us enough context around their relationship, and the context that she has given us makes it sound like the whole relationship is not in a great place with regards to communication. And so yes, some amount of checking in with your spouse is pretty normal. In the majority of cases, I would argue that most people will just say what they're up to without needing any kind of questions. Just because, hey, when you make small talk after the end of a long day where both of you worked, then you just catch up on what the other person was up to, and then it's actually like a nice moment where you connect with each other instead. And so that's pretty standard and pretty normal for the majority of relationships. I would argue, I think that the problem is just when that goes too far, and especially when that goes too far without any seeming reason for it. The next one is very interesting, titled, "My husband is really tight with money. What to do?" She says, "I need advice on my husband and work. I've been a stay-at-home mom for almost 3 years. I have an almost 3-year-old daughter and an almost 2-year-old son. My husband works very hard. He has a full-time job and then runs a business on his days off, so he's very busy. He is 100% the breadwinner, which is great. I consider myself very lucky to be able to stay home and raise my children without financial worry. But my husband is very strict with money. I admit we're doing great because of him, but because he earns the money, he basically dictates how it's spent. Don't get me wrong, he provides for us well. The kids and I don't go without anything we need, but my issue is that that's where it stops. He pays the bills and buys us what we need, but when it comes to mine and the children's wants, there's just no wiggle room. It's necessities or nothing. He earns a lot and saves around 2/3 of his paycheck each week. As we live way below our means, we have a tiny comfortable home, sound cars, a small mortgage, etc. Anyway, before I fell pregnant, we earned about the same wage. Our earning potential was on par, so we had so much freedom to do whatever we liked. But since I had children, he's completely knuckled down. He says he's saving for our future, an early retirement, and the chance to have our fun when the children are older. I admire and respect this a lot, but damn, a girl has wants. I want to get my hair done by a professional for once, buy a coffee when I'm out with the kids, hell, order fast food instead of cooking just once. We never eat out, we never spend money on entertainment, no Netflix in the house, nothing that isn't 100% necessary for surviving. I've always wanted to go back to work and make my own money again, but he's adamant he wants me home with the kids because wanting to work and needing to work are different. And I don't need to work, so I shouldn't. But I got tired of not having the luxury to pick myself up a bit of cake while I'm out buying groceries, so I decided to apply for some jobs that I can do from home. Long story short, I got a job 1 day a week working from home. He wasn't happy, but he couldn't really stop me, and having some cash to buy the kids and I things that we wanted was marvelous. But here is where I run into trouble. I have 2 under 3 and my almost 2-year-old is pretty chill. He'd sit and watch tractors on YouTube all day if I let him. He's happy to just hang around the house and play with pots and pans or read books or whatever. But my 3-year-old needs more stimulation. She knows that there's a big wide world out there and she wants to explore and learn. She's forever getting under my feet, asking a billion questions and distracting me from working on the one day I need to. So I started looking at care for her. I found a place with a few kids where she gets to learn and have fun. I enrolled her and she absolutely loves it. But because my husband earns so much, fees are extremely high to have her 1 day a week. By the time I pay her fees and the fuel to get her there, I'm barely making anything left over. She loves it so much and my husband agrees she should keep going, but he 100% refuses to help with the cost of sending her because, quote, it was my choice to work. I feel like it wasn't my choice. I had to work to be able to live because while he's keeping us alive, we aren't living. I know I sound so spoiled, but I think you should either help pay at least some of her childcare fees or give us a small amount of spending money a month so we can go out and have fun. I know there's lots of things to do with kids without spending money, but I hate that we miss out on things because I don't have $5 to get them admission or a few dollars to buy them activities for home. It's really depressing and I don't know how to let him know that without causing an argument. What should I do? Now, Dave Ramsey from the Ramsey show, who's like a finance guru. You can look him up online. He has this really fun statement that he says quite often, which is that there are a bunch of different dynamics that you can have in a marriage when it comes to money. There's one dynamic where one person is in charge of all of the money and the other person has absolutely nothing to do with it. There is another dynamic where both people pay, pretty much they split everything, you know, so they sit down, they say, okay, you're going to pay for rent, I'm going to pay for electricity, I'm going to pay for heating, and so on. They split the bills in that way, or they try to split everything 50-50, or however else they manage to do it. And then there's one where the couple pools everything together, and that's how they manage their finances. They're both equally as responsible for the finances and know exactly what's going on at all times. Now, the first dynamic of those three is the worst in many ways, and it is definitely the one where instead of it being a relationship of partners, equal partners who both have an equal stake and an equal say in the relationship and in their finances and with regards to their kids and with everything else that they're building together, instead you have basically one parent and one child. And so what the husband has done here is he has relegated his wife to the role of child. She doesn't get a say about any of the spending. He just decides what's happening with the money. She has no say when it comes to whether she wants to work or not. If she wants to work, which is what she did here, then he's like, okay, then you're doing this by yourself, then we're no longer in this together. And that's pretty awful. It's awful on pretty much every single level. I find it like, it almost boggles my mind that when she writes this, she says, hey, I think that he is like, she admires and respects him for being really dedicated to their future, for being a really good provider, for wanting to look after them. But honestly, he does not want to look after them. He wants to force them to live according to his own rules and according to his own decisions. And somehow the fact that she gave up her job to become a stay-at-home mom has made him completely insane. Just the level of controlling behavior that he is exhibiting here is just unbelievable. It would drive me crazy that he can save 2/3 of his paycheck every month and is completely unable to give her some spending money. That's just an awful human being. Like, he's simply an awful husband. I have no idea how he could think that that's okay. I have no idea how they had conversations about this where she said, okay, look, I need a job because I want spending money because this is ridiculous. I can't afford $5 admission fee to take my kids to a museum. And he was like, well, yeah, too bad. That's just how we live right now, because even though we have the money and we have the means, then that's just too bad. Now, I understand that there is some element of this where planning for the future is really great, where keeping a good eye on your money is pretty great. Like, it's just understanding exactly where you're spending and how you're spending and why you're spending on particular things. Having this understanding of, okay, what's a need versus what's a want, and being able to say, okay, maybe we don't want to spend on too many wants this month for whatever reason. Like, all of that is fair enough. But fundamentally, if you're dependent on the money as well, like, he should respect you as his wife, OP. You should respect OP as his wife enough that she should have a say as well in what's happening with the money. The fact that she's a stay-at-home mom should not relegate her to the role of child in their relationship. It does not mean that she no longer has any say in anything, or that she shouldn't have any decision-making power about anything. So yes, as far as I'm concerned, the husband here is being completely obnoxiously over the top, overbearing, and just a really horrible person. That he wants her to still cover childcare. Again, despite having all the money, I would actually get it if they were very poor. If they were very poor, they're always pretty much on the edge, they never have any money to save, then I would be very understanding, because I understand that that's a very stressful situation. And in many ways you would say, hey, okay, he's taking his role as husband and provider for the family seriously, and that's pretty awesome. You know, that he's doing his best to try and make sure that the family survives whatever period of time that they have where things are really tight. But like this, it's just awful. It's just horrendous. So yes, I do think that you should cause an argument, and that fundamentally you should cause an argument that starts from, hey, the way that we are dealing with finances is not good. It should not be the case that a giant part of the relationship, i.e. 50% of the marriage, does not have a say in how money is being spent. And it's not okay to just decide to give her zero money and then expect her to deal with the kids with zero money. To just never have any money available whatsoever is awful. Like, it's just not, that's not a state that you can continue living in. And when she says, hey, he argues that it was her choice to work. And she says, well, actually, I wouldn't have chosen to go to work if I'd had money available. Then that's just, does that not defeat the entire point of him working so hard and becoming such a high earner and trying really hard to provide for the family? Like, he's put her in a position where it doesn't matter how hard he works because she still has to provide for herself and for her kids anyway. So it's just nonsensical. It's completely nonsensical. So yes, OP, if I were you, I would definitely sit down with him and say, this is just not, like, we need to get on the same page with regards to finances. However it is we make that happen. If he's really insistent on doing this kind of split, just you don't need to save 2/3 of your paycheck every month. You can make that 50% of your paycheck, which is still amazing. Like, it's still pretty amazing to be able to save 50% of your paycheck, and then that extra 10% can be your spending money. Or he agrees that you work and that he's going to support you with work, and that means paying for childcare as needed as well. Like, you need to be able to have a normal adult conversation about this, and you need to get on the same page with regards to finances in terms of what is your approach to finances, what is reasonable, what is not. You should have equal voting power when it comes to how much is saved, what you spend on, and so on. The fact that you're a stay-at-home mom should not mean that you no longer have a say in any of these things. So this is pretty horrendous, and I feel really bad for OP. The first comment says, no, you don't sound spoiled. Your husband sounds like a misogynistic piece of work. In my house, we don't have my money or your money. It's our money. And we both get a say in how we spend it. I'm the main breadwinner, but my husband contributes to our success as a family by taking care of the kids. He deserves every penny I own and then some. I can't even imagine telling him what he can or cannot buy. And then OP replies, I think this is where the line gets blurred with him because he insists that it's our money, but he doesn't want me to waste it. He does buy his own things for his hobbies. He always asks if it's okay first, and I say yes, because in my mind he does work hard and it is his money, so I can't really say no. I'm qualified to work his job. That's how we met, but he doesn't want me to return to work. I tell him I'd trade positions in a heartbeat and work full time while he stays at home with the kids. We wouldn't lose a cent of income. The roles would just be reversed, but he says no, it's his job. So I guess you're right when you say that he's misogynistic. I just feel like I've been on this merry-go-round for years. We rarely fight, but when we do, it's about money because I purchased something that we didn't need, or because I got upset that I can't purchase something I want after he's bought something for one of his hobbies. He says that I guilt trip him, and if I didn't want him to buy it, I should have said, but I didn't because it's not worth the argument to me. I don't know how to get through to him. And here already, you can kind of see where OP might be making mistakes. So number one, I think throwing around the term misogynistic is not necessary. It doesn't seem to me that he's sexist. I think the idea that he feels like it's his job to provide for the family is just a normal masculine urge to want to be the provider for the family. Yes, there are some men who are happy to not do that, but the majority of men do feel that as a personal responsibility that they have to take on, just their burden. And so I think that that's normal. I would not say that, hey, okay, this means that there's that he's sexist in some kind of way. But this part, she says yes when he can buy things for his hobbies, and he refuses to let her buy things for her hobbies. And then when she does want to buy something, she's like, yeah, well, you bought that. So, and of course, fair enough. At that point, he also says, okay, but you agreed. If you agreed, then why are you throwing it at my face now? So from a communication perspective, essentially, she doesn't actually care about money expenditures all that much. She does want a sense of fairness in their relationship where maybe he gets a budget of spending money and she gets a budget of spending money. But instead of sitting down, having a conversation on that level and saying, hey, okay, before we decide to spend money on anything, let's maybe agree that you can have $500 to spend on whatever you want, and I can have $500 to spend on whatever I want, and then it's equal and fair, and we're both on the same page, and we both keep an eye on it, and our spending doesn't go too far, and the money is not wasted, and so on. Instead of coming at it from this angle, they go around this awful circle where he wants to spend on particular things, and she wants to spend on particular things, but she does not actually articulate that and say it to him in a way that gets through to him at all. When he says, I guilt trip him, And if I didn't want him to buy it, then I shouldn't have said it. Then I should have said it. And she's like, I didn't because it's not worth the argument to me. It's like, yeah, but actually it is worth the argument to you, because what it means is that there is an unfairness in how you're treating each other and how the relationship is coming along. And that's a problem. Next person says, that was very hard to read. I admire your husband's hard work to provide for his family, but this seems like financial abuse. You deserve to have some spending money for yourself and the children without having to get a job for that alone. Since he makes much more money than you, it's only fair to pay for half the daycare costs. Simply have a conversation with him about this. Does your husband realize that if you divorce him, he'll have to pay you alimony in addition to child support for 2 children? Oh, God. Sometimes I really hate the things that people say in response to this. So in the comment, hey, it's only fair that he pays for half daycare costs. That 100% comes from a person who's like, yeah, we split everything 50-50 because 50-50 is fair. And actually, no, if he's the primary earner of the family and she wouldn't even have to work, if he just gave her some spending money, then he should suck it up and give her the spending money. And it's not fair at all to expect her to pay for the childcare, honestly, because she's working just so she can have a little bit of money for herself and for the kids. That's just it's terrible. And then the next one is like, hey, does your husband realize that if you divorce him, he'll have to pay you alimony in addition to child support? It's like way to take your relationship and throw it down the toilet and then flush. Like, if this is the statement that you have to go into any financial discussion with, if that's how you approach it, then you've already lost. Then there's nothing that can salvage your marriage from that point onwards. Like, if it sounds like a threat, right? It's like, oh, hey, you know what would happen if we got divorced? Then suddenly you'd have to give me half of all of your money, and then you'd have to pay me, and you'd have to pay me for the kids as well. Like, that sounds so horrendously awful. That's definitely a way to destroy your relationships. That's not something that I would do. Next comment is, I watched my parents go through pretty much what you said. Money withholding is a form of emotional abuse and manipulation, so be careful, please. I understand where he's coming from, but there has to be some give. And OP replies, thank you. I'm trying to save a little just in case something happens. Savings that he doesn't know about, but I don't want to leave. I'm just asking for a little bit of give, like you said. I just don't know how to get the point across and make him realize that our days on this earth are numbered. What if we never make it to those fun times? That's also a pretty sad thought. I would want to be on the same page with my husband when it comes to things like saving for retirement and so on. Like, I think that should be a plan that you both sit down together and you say, okay, how much money do we think we need to invest or to save or whatever to prepare for retirement? At what age are we looking at? How many years of living like this will we be living like this for? I think that these are all normal conversations to have, and part of being able to plan for the future with your finances, which is fundamentally a good thing. But when it manifests itself like this, it seems to me that it connected with a ton of anxiety that he has about spending, wherever that anxiety came from. Possibly, she says she's been a stay-at-home mom for 3 years, and that's kind of around when the change happened. So possibly he reacted to becoming a father in this very militant way, where he suddenly realized that, hey, he needs to work a lot harder in order to continue providing for the family. And then that just spiraled out of control, and now he doesn't know how to bring it back. Either way, money, in my opinion, as much as possible, should be something that both parties are 100% involved in, have a good idea what's going on with, agree on the plans that they have with each other, make a budget together. There are a lot of steps that you can take to try and fix your relationship with money, but it cannot be one-sided. And this would be a completely untenable situation for me. Like, I would not be able to continue living under these types of circumstances if I wasn't able to resolve it. And that's a real shame, because it sounds like he's a great dad, and it sounds like he's a pretty good husband around everything else, which is unfortunate. On a very different note, this one is titled, Is This a Thing? She says, in my husband's family, my mother-in-law or father-in-law bring a gift for the other 2 grandkids to the third one's birthday parties. So like, today is my baby's party, and they have a gift or small gifts for my niece and nephew. It's so weird to me, and I kind of find it rude to the birthday kid. It's their day. They are supposed to be getting all the attention and gifts. I'm just asking if it's a normal thing. Now, honestly, gift giving, like, in the majority of cases, I tend to think that people maybe overestimate or put a little bit too much weight on gift giving and how grandparents manage gifts and so on. Like, spend just a little bit too long thinking about it. That said, I actually do think this is a little bit weird. I think it's fundamentally weird because what you're doing is you're teaching the kids whose birthday it is not you're teaching them to expect gifts at just regularly, even when it's not their birthday. And I think that that's a bit of a weird expectation. There is always this point with grandparents where if you get into too much of a habit of giving your grandkids gifts pretty much every time you see them, or at every occasion, every birthday occasion, no matter whose birthday it is, then eventually at some point they start to become a little bit entitled. They start to really expect to receive gifts. And that is not healthy in the long run either. If you want kids to grow up learning and appreciating, well, just appreciating material items in general, being able to develop a good relationship with their grandparents that is not fundamentally based on this, material exchange of goods, and understanding what it's like to share, that sometimes other kids have birthdays and they're the ones that get gifts, and it's okay to share attention, that it's not just about sharing toys, but also about being able to share attention. I think if you want to do all of these things with your kids, then you cannot have gift giving be such a fundamental part of how everyone else interacts with them. I find it more annoying on that end than the end of the child who's like, oh no, but it's my birthday. Why is everyone else getting gifts? I think that's maybe not, to that I would probably say that sounds like a pretty entitled kid already. So I wouldn't take that part too seriously, but yeah, that's how I would approach it. In the comments, one person says, hey, mine did or does that too. We let it slide when the kids were really little, like 3 and under, but then told her to stop, as we didn't like that it put the idea in her head that they should be jealous or feel left out, or that they should expect gifts on other people's birthdays. From what I remember, she tried to push back for a year or two, but then dropped it. And so exactly, that's pretty much exactly what I think. I think it's always this expectation, or the issue is always this expectation and sense of entitlement. And if you're able to keep those things low when it comes to your kids, then that's pretty good. Next person says, hey, I posted about something very similar and people didn't seem to care or mind, but I genuinely don't understand why this is okay. I feel like it devalues the child's actual birthday and also sets a weird expectation that you'll be getting gifts on other people's birthdays. I think it's one thing to get those little gift bags for attending someone's party. It's another thing to get a present specifically intended to you. And someone replies to this, yes, it teaches the kids to always expect gifts. You gotta teach a kid that sometimes they may be disappointed. Are they only ever going to go to family birthdays? What happens when they go to a friend's party and then they don't get a present? Are they going to throw a fit? Seems like it would just start a super bad precedent for all future parties. And that's the thing that sometimes confuses me a lot about grandparents and how they interact with their grandchildren. I get that, hey, you can't expect your grandparents to parent your children, but I do think that there should be some awareness of the types of behavior and how you're reinforcing certain expectations in your grandchildren, and whether you're setting a good precedent or not in terms of what they expect you to do. One of the things that I always find very funny actually about having a dog, if you have a dog, is that some, dogs will do this thing when you're eating at the table where they'll come up to the table and then they'll sit next to you and look up and give you their little sad eyes. And if you ever, if you once give them a little bit of food off your plate, then they immediately, it just snaps on immediately this expectation of, oh, okay, if I come here and I sit here and I look at you, then you're going to give me food. And no offense to kids, because I'm not saying that kids are like dogs, but in some ways kids are a little bit like dogs, or rather, let's say dogs are a little bit like kids. And so teaching them to have that kind of expectation is just really unhealthy for the child, and then it's really hard to break them out of at a later stage. Our next one is titled Things They Say. Quote, sleep now. Yeah, thanks. Tell that to my heartburn, hip pain, bladder, and pelvis pain that wake me up every hour. Once the baby drops, you'll have less heartburn and you can breathe easier. False. Now I have heartburn, can't breathe, and pelvic pain. Woo. 36 weeks, that went by so quickly. Yeah, I'm positive I've been pregnant for approximately 3 years. Enjoy this time while it's just you and your husband. Yeah, if my husband so much as breathes the wrong way, I'm about to roundhouse his ass. So you can say I'm really enjoying this time. You look great. As I waddle into the kitchen to shove 3 Rice Krispie treats into my face while wearing the only pair of sweatpants that fit me and a t-shirt filled with holes with my belly hanging out the bottom. Yep, never felt more beautiful. Now, obviously, this is a mother complaining a little bit about some of the comments that people say when you're pregnant. And she's pretty late in her pregnancy at this stage. She says, 36 weeks. So she has quite a lot to complain about. Honestly, I think, obviously, the image that she ends with is a pretty hilarious one. And fair enough, yeah, like I also did not really care all that much about what I looked like or how I dressed by the end of my pregnancy. I was pretty happy just to have clothes that kind of just covered the belly, to be honest. And some of my favorite t-shirts I didn't even care about. Still wearing them because I still wore them, even though you could see the bottom of the belly. So it looks a little bit funny and it's a little bit funky in general, but it's just part of the spirit of that time, I would say. And I think that after a certain period of time, you just own it and you just live with it and you just understand that, hey, you're only pregnant for so long. So long as you're comfortable, it doesn't really matter what you're wearing or what the people around you think. That said, I think that actually people try, I don't think that most people try to be helpful. I think that most people try to share horror stories, but the statements here, it sounds like people are trying to be somewhat helpful. Things like, hey, that went by so quickly, like that's from their perspective. And time does pass by pretty quickly. Like by the time that you have the kid, you're kind of like, oh, I was pregnant for like 5 minutes is what it feels like. That's how fast that time went by. And statements like, enjoy this while it's just you and your husband. I mean, if you're struggling in general and you're just bitchy and in an angry mood and you kind of want to take it out on everyone, you think that everything everyone says to you is ridiculous, and you're kind of, I guess that you're in this mental state where you're not really going to be broken out of it. But I don't think you have to be that way. I think the fact that people are somewhat trying to be a little bit helpful is sweet and kind. Some of the comments here, pretty much everyone says, hey, I can relate to this. This is a really good point. I feel so heard right now. This comment says, yeah, the sleep now drives me wild. Even if I could sleep well right now, which I can't due to all the reasons that you listed, plus more, it doesn't really matter. It's not like you can save up on sleep. I'm not going to be up at 3 a.m. in August and think, whew, really glad I slept in June. It's made such a difference in my life right now. And yes, I actually do agree with that. I was not sleeping very well in late pregnancy either. And I think that in general, people should just stop commenting on sleep, to be honest. It's not a helpful statement from anyone about anything. Also, when it comes to sleep deprivation while the baby is here, it's just not very helpful. But yeah, that is just a little glimpse of what life looks like when you are pregnant, especially when you are late in pregnancy and you're just a little bit tired and you feel like you can't get any bigger than you currently are. And then you're still getting bigger every week and you're just waiting for it to end. It does end, no one has ever been pregnant forever and it's not so bad. It's a really fun time on the whole. And now we come to our final thread of the day, which is titled Advice. She says, I really want to deliver my baby naturally by pushing, giving a vaginal birth. But my husband has this thing where he finds it gross and sex isn't going to be the same after I have her. And so he wants me to get a C-section. So now I'm debating if I should just do the C-section, even though it's going to be harder for me to move around the house once the baby is born. I just don't want our sex life to change just because I gave birth. Is there any helpful advice anyone can give me? I'm really struggling with this dilemma. This one's pretty horrific. Honestly, I'm not even convinced that this is actually a real question from someone. Some part of me thinks it must be someone who's trolling a little bit. But if I were to treat it as a real question, then I would say that what it shows us is two things. On the one hand, how completely removed from the real life experience of what giving birth and having children is like, how far removed that we've become as a society, because these aren't things that people experience or that they observe or that they hear about often enough that it's normalized to them. And so it just seems strange. That is kind of sad. I feel like for the husband in this case, it sounds a little bit like he thinks the C-section is more normal than giving birth naturally, which is still the way that the vast majority of women in the world give birth, minus a couple of countries there. So that's pretty horrific. And then on the other hand, the part of this that one lesson that I would take from this, or the message that I would understand from reading this, is that, hey, if you say that the purpose of the female body is to bear and nurture children, right? So everything from our biology is kind of really tailored for that. The shape of the pelvis is there. Obviously, all of the sexual organs, the hormonal cycle, the idea of menstruation, the fact that menstruation regulates so many other things in your body. So you have all of this cascade of features that the female body has, and they're all built for the purpose of sustaining life, which is an amazing purpose. Like it's really, you know, mind-boggling and awesome, and one of the most amazing things that nature has created. And instead of saying, okay, you know, the purpose of all of these things is to bring life into the world, which is awesome. Instead, what he's saying is that the purpose is just for my sexual pleasure. The purpose of your body is to please me sexually. And that's really horrific. Like that's what makes the selfishness of this so intense and so disgusting and just so wrong, and why anyone who's at all reasonable reads this and has this like visceral like ew reaction. What kind of person are you to really think this way or to feel this way? And pretty much everyone in the comments says, hey, if my husband said something like this to me, I would leave him. This person says, hey, how old is he? He sounds really immature and selfish. A partner, especially the father of your little one, should be supportive and wants what's best for you and for your little one. In my opinion, my little one, my health and recovery is more important than what the husband wants. Our bodies were made for childbirth. I know I shouldn't be bothered by this post, but he sounds like an ass. Threatening no intimacy unless you undergo surgery, that's abusive. My husband knows that if he said something like that, I'd laugh in his face and then tell him I'd find it somewhere else. Yeah, so that's pretty much all of them. The next person says, hey, completely immature of your husband. C-section's a major abdominal surgery. Most moms do not want that for a reason, and many moms who have C-sections hope for a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after a C-section in subsequent pregnancies. It's your body, and you have every right to deliver your baby the way that you want, barring any emergencies or complications. I'm not sure what country you're in, but most OBs are not going to perform an unnecessary C-section. I think your husband needs a serious reality check. If I'm being honest, he is completely out of line and sounds selfish and uneducated. And again, this is all assuming that he's a real person who really exists, who really has this thought. I hope that not very many men think this way. And I would also say that I think that if there are people who think this way, then it's fundamentally caused by them just not knowing anything about birth or not understanding anything about it. So if I had this experience, which I will never have because my husband is not a crazy person, but if I were to have this experience, then I think I would start from that angle of, hey, what do you actually know about birth? How do you understand what the processes that the body goes through are? And do you understand what's actually healthier, better for both your wife and your son or daughter, in this case, for your baby, which is really, really sad. This idea that people can be so selfish that they rather look out for their own gain, especially for their future sexual pleasure, over the health of their baby or their wife is just pretty horrifying. That's a real horrifying thought. If you disagree with any of my comments about anything here, feel free to leave us a comment down below, and I will see you next time.